So I'm going to show you guys a series of pictures, and on those pictures are a bunch of different people, and just shout out what you think the people in the pictures are feeling, okay? One slip of their lips. Happy. Good. Very good. Congratulations, everyone. You now have the emotional intelligence of a 4-year-old. So emotional intelligence is the ability to recognize, harness, and regulate your own emotions. But why is any of this relevant? Well, it turns out that studies have found that IQ testing is no longer a valid indication of how well someone is going to succeed in their future, whereas emotional intelligence is actually a better predictor of it. And now that the job market is becoming so competitive and recruiters are understanding that book smarts doesn't just cut it by itself, it's important to understand how emotional intelligence could benefit us all. So going through a lot of research on the topic and being a psych student myself, I've comprised an entire agenda of everything that you need to know about emotional intelligence for today. So the first thing that we're going to learn is about why IQ testing is unreliable. Then we're going to talk about the breakdown of what emotional intelligence is, before finally learning the benefits of emotional intelligence in the workplace. But first, what is this whole thing with millennial, hippie, emotional intelligence, I don't like IQ testing? Aren't IQ tests fine just the way they are? Well, it turns out that studies have shown that IQ tests aren't exactly as reliable as people thought they were before. That's because traditional IQ testing only tests reason and analytics, and gets rid of all other factors of a person's personality that could characterize them as intellectually capable. One example of this is this slide. Both of these pictures show someone in society that would be considered a genius, but only the left one shows someone who is accounted for on traditional IQ tests. Another reason that IQ tests are no longer reliable is because they can actually be culturally biased in favor of the Western culture. According to an article written in the Journal of Cognitive Science in 2005, written by researcher Judith Kearns, she did research with Australian Aboriginal children in the desert regions of the continent and found that they did well on the visual and spatial memory parts of the IQ testing, but not really on any of the other parts because they weren't familiar with the culture. It makes sense that they would do well on the visual and spatial memory part because navigating through the deserts and knowing their way back home is just a part of their lifestyle. So knowing other cultural things on the IQ test wouldn't be relevant to them. So that's why, in one instance, that IQ testing would be considered culturally biased and unreliable. Okay, so we get it. IQ testing is terribly outdated and just plain bad. But how is emotional intelligence any better? Let's look at the 3 parts of emotional intelligence to see where it would break down. According to an article from Psychology Today, dated 2017, the first part of being emotionally intelligent is being aware of your emotions and the emotions of others. So for example, you notice that your friend is upset through body language or inadequate response to a meme that you sent over Instagram. No emojis, no hearts, no laughing, nothing. So clearly you're picking up that there's some sort of tension there. The second part of being emotionally intelligent is being able to harness this recognition and apply it into some sort of actionable way. So upon realizing that there's some tension between you and your friend over Instagram, deciding to have a conversation about it and resolving the issue would be a way to be more emotionally intelligent. The third part of being emotionally intelligent is being able to manage and regulate your emotions and being able to cheer up or calm down another person. So in your discussion, if things get a little bit heated and she starts accusing you of things and you start freaking out, knowing that it's important to address each other's concerns is another example of being an emotionally intelligent individual. So now that we understand what emotional intelligence is, here's where we get to the good part. How can it land us a job? So the reason why emotionally intelligent is favorable for recruiters is because being emotionally intelligent shows people that you're able to make intuitive decisions. The way this happens is because physiologically, in the structure of the brain, your rational decision-making capabilities and your emotional and feeling structures are actually linked. So whenever someone says, I want to make a rational decision, not an emotional one, it's actually scientifically incorrect because the actual structures are physically connected. Ever heard of the term gut check? That is a prime example of using rational decision making when you can't really shake a feeling that you have. Another study showed that emotional intelligence can actually help you improve the way that you perform cognitively. In a study conducted by Drs. Tai and Kirby at the Mount Sinai Institute in New York, they found that people who had more emotional intelligence, even when they had a higher IQ in 2 study groups, found that those with a higher emotional intelligence did better on cognitively striving tasks because they were able to think about the situation and not just worry about the facts at hand. So essentially, being able to make intuitive decisions not only with the factual basis of your knowledge can actually help you in the workplace. So today we learned about a lot of emotional intelligence knowledge. We learned about how the IQ test is unreliable because it's culturally biased and only tests one type of knowledge. Then we understood that there's 3 breakdowns to emotional intelligence, being able to recognize, harness, and regulate your emotions, before finally understanding how emotional intelligence could help us in the workplace. But that's not the only thing we learned today. We also learned that in a world that's constantly changing, with people developing new ideas and coming up with new innovations, it's really easy to sometimes be at the back end of it and be swept away with all the change. But it's important that if we want to stay at the forefront of this, be the ones that are pushing innovation forward and coming up with new ideas, it's important to stop, look around, process, and just let yourself feel. Thank you.